At Thanksgiving dinner, my father set down his fork, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Your job is to work while your sister enjoys life. If you have a problem, there's the door." No pause, no hesitation, just the truth they'd hidden for years. Chloe didn't flinch. My mother stayed silent. And in that moment, I understood I wasn't a daughter, I was their workforce. I didn't argue. I simply stood, walked into the Portland rain, and made the choice that would unravel everything they depended on. Before I tell you the rest, where are you listening from, and what would you have done in my place? My name is Amanda, and for most of my life, people assumed I was the steady one, the girl who could lift what was heavy, fix what was broken, and keep the family business breathing, even when no one else bothered to try. I grew up in a glass greenhouse on the outskirts of Portland, the kind that always looked warm from the outside, but felt cold when you were the one working inside it. While other kids spent weekends biking around their neighborhoods, I was hauling soil bags twice my weight, kneeling in the damp earth, with numb fingers pretending it was normal because my father called it building character. Chloe never touched the dirt. She floated through childhood like a guest of honor, private lessons, warm rooms, soft hands that never once lifted a crate. My parents said she had potential, as if the rest of us were just scaffolding to hold her up. I remember watching her practice dance routines in the heated sunroom, while I stood outside in the rain mud splashing my boots, wondering why love came so easily to her and never seemed to reach me. Even as adults, nothing changed. Chloe moved through life cushioned, supported, praised for the smallest effort, while I became the invisible engine running beneath everything. I managed inventory, checked bills, handled the repair calls no one else knew how to make. My father would pat my shoulder like I was a dependable machine. My mother would murmur that I was strong, which was her polite way of saying I could survive neglect. The truth was simpler. I kept the family afloat because no one else would. I kept hoping that if I pushed through just one more crisis, they'd finally see me not as the labor, but as the daughter. So when we all sat down at that Thanksgiving table, the candles lit the food, steaming, the room filled with everything that should have felt safe, I thought foolishly that maybe it would be different. Maybe the years of carrying their world would finally count for something. But the silence between us had been built long before that night, and the moment my father opened his mouth, I realized this wasn't a crack in the relationship. It was the truth of it. I felt the shift before the words even left his mouth, the way my father leaned back in his chair, the way my mother's eyes dropped as if she already knew what was coming. Chloe twirled her wine glass, pretending she wasn't waiting for the show, and then it landed sharp and casual, like he was commenting on the weather. "Your job is to work while your sister enjoys life." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The turkey steam rose between us, the candles flickered, and every childhood memory lined up in my head like witnesses. But he didn't blink. He meant it. Every syllable had been waiting years to come out. My mother didn't flinch. She pressed her napkin into her lap and avoided my eyes the way she always did when she agreed with something cruel, but didn't want the responsibility of saying it herself. Chloe sat straighter, smoothing her hair like a queen adjusting her crown. I tried to breathe just once to steady myself. "Dad, that's not—" He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "If you have a problem, there's the door." There it was, the line that didn't just bruise it, severed. Years of effort, every bill I quietly handled, every crisis I solved, every moment I carried what they dropped, reduced to a dismissal so clean it didn't even sound angry. It sounded practiced, familiar, like something he'd been rehearsing for the day I finally questioned the arrangement. My fork clinked against the plate. No one moved to pick it up. I looked around the table, searching for even one face that looked conflicted, regretful, unsure. Nothing. My father was rigid and unbothered. My mother was small and silent. Chloe was almost smiling, like she'd been waiting for this hierarchy to be spoken out loud. The room felt suddenly too tight, too loud, too bright. Every plant in the greenhouse behind us, every leaf I'd misted trimmed, saved, pressed against the glass like an audience watching me realize my role wasn't daughter, wasn't partner, wasn't family. I was infrastructure, replaceable, expected. The rain outside intensified, tapping harder against the windows, a rhythm I knew well from nights I worked long after everyone else went to bed. My father's words echoed with each strike. Work, sister, door. And something inside me, a part I'd kept quiet for years, finally snapped into clarity. Not from rage, though there was rage, but from recognition. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was the blueprint they'd built their lives on. I felt myself sit back, shoulders loosening, breath steadying. If this was the truth, then I didn't have to keep pretending we were something we weren't. I lifted my eyes to theirs, and that was the moment before I even stood up, when everything between us began to break. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my hand on the table the way Chloe might have if someone ruined her day. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me, like a storm pulling back, just far enough to make the air eerily still. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood, and every face at that table turned toward me, not out of concern, but out of annoyance, like I was interrupting their evening. "Fine," I said, my voice level steady. "I'll leave. And you can start paying your bill." For the first time all night, someone reacted. My father's jaw twitched. My mother's eyes widened. Chloe froze with her glass halfway to her lips. They all understood what those words meant. They just never thought I'd have the spine to say them. I reached for the keyring hanging at my belt, heavy, warm from my body heat, filled with years of responsibility I never asked for. Keys to storage rooms, delivery vans, inventory, locks, cabinets of tools no one else knew how to use. I unclipped them, held the weight of them for a single heartbeat, then dropped them onto the table. The sound wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like cold metal, slicing fabric. No one moved to touch them. I walked toward the back door that opened to the greenhouse, the place where I'd spent more hours than in my own bed. I pushed it open, and a blast of winter rain swept in, sharp and freezing, scattering napkins and blowing out 2 candles on the table. My mother gasped softly. My father cursed under his breath. Chloe whined that her hair was getting damp. But I didn't look back. I stepped into the storm, letting the rain soak straight through my coat and cross the path to my car. I didn't run. Running would imply fear, and fear was the one thing I felt loosening its grip with every step. Inside the car, the world felt muted, softened by fogged windows and the steady hum of the engine. I gripped the steering wheel not to steady myself, but to anchor the realization that this was the last time I would ever carry their burdens. 40 minutes later, I unlocked the door to my studio apartment. Warm, quiet air greeted me, scented with potting soil and the faint citrus of the lemon oil I used on the shelves. My plants, my real plants, were thriving, green lush, climbing the exposed brick in patterns that felt like freedom. I slipped off my wet coat and went straight to my desk. My laptop glowed to life, reflecting off the leaves around it. My fingers moved without hesitation. Cancel recurring payments, revoke shared access, remove my authorization from anything tied to the nursery. Each click was a breath I hadn't allowed myself to take in years. Then I opened the folder I'd been avoiding. Inside was the paperwork for the account my grandmother had left for Amanda's future. $150,000. Gone. Drained years ago. The signature on the withdrawal form was supposed to be mine. It wasn't. Linda's handwriting always curled at the edges like she was trying to make even her deception look delicate. The betrayal hit with a coldness deeper than the rain. Not anger clarity. They hadn't just used me. They'd stolen what my grandmother meant for my independence and funneled it into Chloe's lifestyle. I closed the folder gently, almost tenderly, the way you might close the eyes of someone you'd finally stopped hoping would wake up different. They wanted me to walk out the door. Fine. But they had no idea what it meant when the person holding up the entire house finally let go. I didn't hear from them for almost a full day. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was expectant, like the pause before a glass hits the floor. I knew exactly how this would go. First confusion, then irritation, then the familiar entitled certainty that I would come crawling back, because that was the role I'd been assigned since childhood. But on the morning of the second day, the messages started. Gregory Zone 3 isn't misting. Get over here and fix it. Then another inventory is dropping. This is thousands of dollars. Stop being dramatic. Then Chloe Mom is crying. My audition is ruined because of this negative energy. Can you just handle it? Negative energy. That's what she called decades of unpaid labor. I muted the notifications and focused on the design proposal in front of me. My hands were steady, my breathing even. They could rattle the greenhouse all they wanted. They no longer had access to the foundation. By noon, the buzzing stopped. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine they understood. But entitlement doesn't die quietly, it mutates. The next morning, as I stood in a meeting with senior designers reviewing structural load requirements for a rooftop garden, the receptionist's voice cut sharply through the intercom. "Amanda, your parents are here. They say it's urgent." The room fell still. My stomach didn't drop the way it once would have. Instead, something inside me braced like stepping into cold water on purpose. "I'll handle it," I said, offering a brief apology to the partners before stepping into the hallway. The lobby was all glass and polished concrete, bright with winter light. And in the center of it stood Gregory and Linda, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Their clothes were wrinkled, their eyes frantic. Linda clutched her purse like it was a life raft. "Amanda," my father boomed, trying for authority but cracking on the second syllable. "This has gone on long enough. You need to come home and fix what you broke." I stopped several feet away, letting the distance speak for me. "I didn't break anything," I said quietly. "I just stopped holding everything together." Gregory stepped closer. "We have nowhere to go. The landlord wants payment and they said the account bounced." "That's not my problem," I answered. "You told me I wasn't family, just labor. Remember the door you offered me?" His face reddened, confusion turning to fear. "Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything." I reached into the folder tucked under my arm. "These are your words." I held up the photo of the withdrawal document, the one with my forged signature. The moment my father recognized it, his shoulders caved as if the weight of the truth hit him physically. Linda made a choking sound. "Amanda, please. You don't understand. We needed the money. Chloe needed a chance." "You stole from me," I said, voice steady. "From a fund Grandma left for my future. You didn't take a loan. You didn't ask. You forged my name to pay for an apartment Chloe couldn't afford." Chloe wasn't there, but her shadow hung heavy in the air between us. My mother's hands trembled. "We were going to put it back." "You had 3 years," I replied. "You didn't put back a single dollar." Gregory tried to recover his old authority. "You wouldn't dare report this. We are your parents." The sentence was meant to remind me of duty. Instead, it revealed his last illusion that biology was immunity. I took a single step forward, close enough for him to see that nothing about me resembled the daughter he once commanded. "I already filed the report with the Financial Crimes Division," I said. "They're reviewing the documents now." He staggered back like I'd struck him. "Amanda?" "No, we could go to jail." "You won't," I said. "Not if you leave Portland today and start taking responsibility for your own lives. I've already arranged restitution through the sale of the nursery assets. It will cover part of the debt." Linda's voice wavered. "We can't just leave." "Where would we go? That's for you to figure out, just like I always had to." The receptionist hovered nearby, eyes wide, pretending not to listen. Gregory's face crumpled. "Not in remorse. Remorse requires empathy, but in fear of consequence." "We're your family," he whispered hoarsely. "That ended the night you told me the door was my option," I replied. "All I'm doing now is walking through it completely." I nodded toward security, who had been waiting discreetly near the elevators. "You'll need to go now." Linda reached out as if touching my coat sleeve could undo the past. "Amanda, please." I stepped back. "I'm done being the soil you grow your comfort in," I said. "If you want a life, build it yourselves." Security guided them toward the doors, Gregory stiff and silent, Linda sobbing softly into her scarf. The glass slid shut behind them with a quiet hiss. For the first time in my life, watching them leave didn't hurt. It felt like the greenhouse door swinging closed on a storm I no longer needed to survive. Hours later, after the lobby had emptied and the winter sun had dipped behind the skyline, I returned to my desk. My colleagues didn't ask questions. They just gave me space, the kind my family never offered. I opened my laptop, not out of habit, but out of intention. My future was no longer tied to theirs. No more payments, no more rescues, no more years lost to a loyalty that only flowed one direction. and as I sat there surrounded by sketches of gardens I hoped to build someday, I realized something with a clarity sharp enough to cut. I hadn't destroyed their world. I had simply stepped out of it and watched it collapse under the weight of its own neglect. In the weeks that followed, the fallout settled into place exactly the way it always should have, according to reality, not fantasy. Without my income propping up their lives, the nursery couldn't survive a single audit. The land was sold off to cover debts. The greenhouse glass went to a grower outside the city. And for the first time in decades, Gregory and Linda had to live as people, not as monarchs of a kingdom I had built for them. Gregory found part-time work as a night attendant at a warehouse on the industrial side of Portland. Linda started helping at a local co-op market on weekends, sorting produce with the same hands that once forged my signature. Chloe moved north, sharing a cramped apartment with roommates while juggling shifts between auditions and retail. None of it was cruel. It was simply natural consequences. I didn't celebrate their struggle, but I didn't save them either. My energy went somewhere better into the 5 acres of raw land I purchased outside the city. Wild, uneven, overgrown, but mine. The first morning I walked it, mist rising from the soil, I knelt, pressed my palms into the earth, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. A beginning, not an obligation. I return to that land often now, watching the first shoots push through the soil, slow but certain. It feels nothing like the life I left behind. Out here, growth doesn't demand sacrifice. It asks for patience, intention, and honesty. The same things I finally chose for myself. Their choices shaped their path. Mine opened a new one. And in the quiet of my own future, I can finally say the words that changed everything, simple as that. If my story feels familiar, share your own and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.